So in this video, just want to welcome back Karen once again, and now we're going to do some meddling with your mind, if that's okay, Karen.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
It's all right.
Fantastic. Listen, just a bit of disclaimer here. In the world, no one has it all together. Absolutely not. I most certainly don't have it all together. Karen, you got it all together?
Absolutely not. No.
No, if you've got it all together, please let us know how you do it. I've never known anyone who has it all together all of the time, all right? I've shared with you this ABCDE model now, this framework, and it might look a little bit complex, but it's not, all right? If I can just really help you to appreciate the essence of what we're doing here. Have you ever heard the term, all roads lead to Rome? Well, as CBT practitioners, our Rome is just a shift in perspective, where our client is going to look at an event, a circumstance, a situation, whatever that is causing them a little bit of emotional turmoil from an alternative, healthier perspective. That is it. That is all that is required, my friends, in order to really bring massive shifts and seas of change into a person's life. Might seem overly simplistic, but I guarantee it's not. Sometimes we cannot see the woods for the trees. So what I have in front of me right here, I have my workbook. You know, that resource that we created for you about 4 or 5 videos ago. Well, I've asked Karen to this time round, not so much talk about a goal, all right, but talk about a problem or an issue that she's had just in the last few days. And when I'm talking about an issue, I'm talking about an unhealthy emotion, all right, because she will have had one or two. I've had them. I think yesterday we went for dinner with the in-laws, all right, and this is perhaps something that someone could take me through a couple of CBT sessions through at some point in the point. I hope that the in-laws don't ever watch this video, but see, when I go along for Karen's family dinners, honestly, the angst I feel when walking in the door, I'm like, it's just, I get full of dread, all right? I wonder what cognitive distortion I'm operating out of. Possibly it's some sort of catastrophic
worst case scenario.
I think in the past, I've been kind of like judged a little bit, especially in the early days of our relationship, wasn't it? So I think perhaps I maybe just expect more of in the future that which I've had in the past. But yesterday was quite an all right day, wasn't it?
I thought it was pretty good, yeah.
Now, the reason we're talking about the in-laws is not just because we're here to have a conversation, because I know that Karen's issue kind of centres itself around this a little bit also, doesn't it?
Yeah, quite a small level of discomfort, but I was aware in conversations that at times the way that a certain member of the family speaks to you, it's almost like she's trying to have my back and trying to protect me from you, and I feel this kind of like frustration inside when she starts to like advise or speak at you.
Oh, I hadn't noticed. Oh, yes, I had.
Not quite sure how to handle the situation.
Yeah, we there's a little bit of judgment going on, isn't there, in this family member? So it's interesting. So for demonstration purposes, right, why we're having this conversation, is we're going to be now looking at this ABCDE model, all right? We know that a person or a client has a problem when they feel that they have a problem. So for demonstration purposes, all we want to focus in on is the emotional problem, right? What is the emotional problem? If we could word it, one word, what would it be?
It's anxiety.
Anxiety.
Yeah.
Angst, anxiety.
Yeah.
Internal turbulence, discomfort, something like that. Okay, cool. So what we want to be looking at now is the most appropriate tool or set of questions that we might ask a client that's going to help them to look at their life circumstance from an alternative perspective that's going to just completely eradicate this right away, right? That's what we want to do. We don't need to deal with the anxiety. We don't need to explore the anxiety. We certainly don't need to look at when is the anxiety at its most prominent or anything like that. All right. Regardless of what training courses you've been on in the past, we certainly do not need to focus on emotions. Instead, we just acknowledge them. Right. So we've got some angst going on here. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually, for this demonstration, I'm going to use the Challenging Anxious Thoughts worksheet. All right, that's what I'm going to do, which you can obviously access in that resource that we created for you. So, first things first, what I'm going to ask us to do now is just have a conversation just to get clear on the exact process that you go through in your mind that brings about this feeling of angst.
Yeah.
Is that going to be useful?
Yes,
Let's
absolutely,
look at where
yeah.
it comes from,
Yeah.
because if we understand the source, then we can deal with the issue at source.
Okay.
I think many forms of therapy and many helpers look at cures for problems, don't they? You know, how do we cure this? How do we cure that? CBT operates from a slightly different angle. Well, we look at, okay, how can we prevent something like this rather again, because prevention is better than cure. Prevention is better and far more effective than cure. So let's look at how we can build some preventative measures into your life that's going to enable you to perhaps relate to situations like this more appropriately in a healthier manner
Okay, yeah.
moving forward. So first things first, what I'm going to invite you to do is just close your eyes for a few moments, because I know you're quite a visual person. If this is indeed useful for you to do, and just simply say what you see when you're, before you go into this event, into this family event.
Yeah.
What is it you're focusing on? Just replay the images or the pictures in your mind that you perhaps were doing yesterday, and just tell me what it is that you're looking at, what you're thinking about, what you're focusing on, what you're actually seeing. What's the actual event here? What's the trigger?
A room full of people that I've grown apart from a bit.
A room full of people whom you've grown apart from just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We're talking about family members, are we?
Talking about family members, yeah. I can tell that they don't quite know where they stand with me.
They don't know quite. So you can tell that they don't know quite where they stand with you.
Yeah, yeah. And the vice versa. I don't quite know what they think or feel about that, and where I stand with them.
Okay. Interesting. So is a problem actually a problem, or is this just a kind of like a perception or a fear or an angst? Do these people actually know where they stand with you, or do they not know where they stand with you? And what does it actually mean to know where we stand with someone?
That's a good question. It is more my perception of how I think things are, because I haven't actually had a conversation with them.
Okay.
So it's more my fear is that they don't quite know where they stand with me.
So the fear is that they don't quite know where they stand with you, and this is a real genuine fear.
When I'm in that environment, yeah.
When you're in that environment,
Yeah.
Okay. So could we define this as being the situation that kind of triggers this feeling of angst?
Yes.
Is that fine?
Yeah.
Now, for demonstration purposes, that's all we actually want to do for the purposes of this demonstration, right? Guiding you through the challenging anxious thoughts worksheet, by the way. So in your own words, right? How would you define this situation then that triggers your feelings of angst? In your own words.
My own words, yeah.
And I'm going to write this down, by the way.
My fear is that they don't know where they stand with me.
Don't know where they stand with you. Is that accurate, or is there more?
There is kind of this twofold. Like there's that element, and then there's also I want to have your back in that environment.
So you want to be a good wife?
I want to be a good wife in that environment.
That's very nice of you, isn't it? So you want to be a good wife.
Yeah.
So you fear that they don't know where they stand with you.
Yeah.
And secondly, you're anxious about being a good wife?
I'm anxious about being a good wife, yeah.
Anxious about being a good wife. It's an interesting one. I'd never heard that one before, darling. Okay, there we go. Anxious about being a good wife. Okay, now what I want to do, I just want to look at these two sides of this coin, all right? I just want you now, in your own words, to just do your best to explain how the two relate. Anxious about being a good wife, and this fear that you don't know, that they don't know exactly where they stand with you. How do the two relate? We just need to understand the relationship here.
Yeah. So the fear that they don't know where, the fear that I feel they don't know where they stand with me.
The fear is that you feel
that these people don't know where they stand with me,
Okay.
because the relationships have grown apart a bit. Yeah.
Which is common, isn't it?
Yeah. And because of that, I think some of them have assumed the worst of you, and there's been levels of judgment in the past through conversation, and I want to kind of preempt that and defend you.
Defend it, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right.
Because of the gap that's come about in the relationship.
Okay. So, what would you say the worst possible outcome could be then in this scenario? What could the worst possible scenario be? Because obviously we have this tendency, don't we, of responding to the worst case scenario sometimes in our mind, which is what I imagine is going to be triggering the angst.
Yeah.
I imagine. So what's the worst possible outcome going to be?
The worst possible outcome is that they don't like you, they have judged you, and that they're unhappy with the relationship with me and they don't know where they stand.
Okay, so is the angst about they're unhappy with me or they're unhappy with you?
The angst is that they're unhappy with you. Yeah, with you.
It's with me. Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be the worst outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the actual main problem then?
The main problem.
What's the main problem then?
The main problem is managing myself well when those little judgments come in, and I feel the angst are rising up inside of me.
So what's the problem? So I never asked you to self-analyse, right? What's the main problem then?
The main problem.
Yeah. Sometimes what Karen has done there was she intellectualised. So she knows what she must do. She has this theology, but there's a bit of a deficit between the theology and the actions and behaviours. So let's look at the problem, not what you know you need to do. That is what we would refer to as an avoidance strategy, by the way. An avoidance strategy. You saw it firsthand here.
So the main problem then is really how I'm feeling.
The main problem is how you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, how I'm feeling, and the uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a little bit more accurate now. So uncertainty. So you don't like uncertainty. The feelings, we all have feelings all day, every day, don't we?
Yeah.
Right. So we can't spend our life having problems with feelings because that's part of the human experience.
Sure.
But uncertainty.
Yeah.
We can certainly explore our relationship with uncertainty. We can't explore our relationship with our feelings. That's a little bit too broad. But uncertainty is different, isn't it? So you don't know where you stand with these people. You fear that they don't know where they stand with you. So it's all centered around uncertainty.
It is. There's a lot of uncertainty, yeah.
Okay, so the worst possible outcome then in response to this uncertainty, the worst outcome, just in a few words, don't think about it, just as simplistically as possible. Worst outcome, just a few words, doesn't matter whether I understand them or not, just as long as you do.
They've assumed the worst.
Okay, so they assume the worst.
Yeah.
They assume the worst. That's the worst possible outcome.
Yeah.
What's the best outcome? What could the best possible outcome be?
That actually they don't really have a problem with you.
They don't have a problem with me.
No.
So they don't have a problem at all.
Yeah.
So the worst problem is that the worst possible problem could be that they have a problem.
Yeah.
The best outcome would be that they don't have a problem.
Yeah.
What would you say the likely outcome is? The likely outcome.
I think the likely outcome is that they're probably not too sure. They're probably quite uncertain as well of you and the distance in the relationship.
Between who?
Between me and them.
Between them and you.
Yeah.
Because I guess you were brought into this family, you grew up with this family, then you get married to some guy, and then, you're not quite as close and you're not seeing them every single day and every single week in the way that you used to. So
Yeah.
sometimes void comes into relationships. So the likely outcome is that they're perhaps still in the process of working out where they stand with you now that your relationship with them has changed.
Yes.
That's possibly the likely outcome.
Yeah.
Okay, so the likely outcome is that they're just working things out, possibly in the same way that you're still working things out.
Yeah. That sounds about
Is that
right.
likely?
Yeah.
Is that the likely outcome?
Yeah, I'd say that's
Okay.
that's quite likely.
So the likely outcome is everyone's just working things out.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does this mean if everyone's just working things out then? What does this mean?
Means that there's space. There's no like final decisions have been made.
So no one's been judge, jury, executioner just yet.
No. Yeah.
So nothing's set in stone, which means you can still influence, you can change, you can speak to these people whenever you want to, about whatever you want to talk to them about. Any areas of uncertainty you can have, healthy, mature discussion about, so that if there is any uncertainty, we can bring clarity,
Yeah.
can't we?
Yeah.
That's what people do, isn't it? We have conversations like this for the purpose of gaining clarity,
Yeah.
so we can minimise uncertainty and confusion.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's a good response, isn't it?
That's yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, it makes a lot more sense than your anxiety, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Makes a lot more sense than feeling angst about not knowing about what's going to happen, when we could just have conversations with people who are just still working things out in the same way as you are.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just imagine, just for a second, the worst case scenario, right? The worst possible outcome actually comes true, right? Let's just imagine worst case scenario actually happens.
Yeah.
All right? So now it's happened. So this thing that you were anxious about, worrying about, has happened now. Will it still matter in 1 week from now?
Yes.
It will. Okay. How about 1 month from now? Will it still matter?
Yes.
Well, how about 1 year from now? Will it still matter?
Not so much. No.
Not so much. Why? What will have changed?
We'll most likely have our own children by then, and I'll have moved on to a new season of life. This will be less of a priority or a focus for me.
Interesting. So you'll have made other changes in your life in the same way they'll have made some more changes in their life.
Yeah.
And sometimes people grow apart, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
We can't take everyone with us forever, can we?
No.
How about it's 2 years from now? 2 years from now? Or 10 years from now? Will this still matter?
No. 10 years from now,
10 years? No.
that's,
Cool.
my life will totally have moved on.
So in response to this way of thinking, all right, how relevant is the angst now? How relevant is feeling uptight or anxious when you're in an environment like this? How important is it?
It's not that important in light of what I'm moving on to next. It actually isn't that important.
So what would be a better, healthier response then? All right, so we have this irrational thought, all right? we don't know where we stand with them. We don't know what they're thinking. That's what you're focusing on.
Yeah.
That's the worst case scenario. That's the irrational way of thinking. Catastrophic worst case scenario might happen, that they think the worst of me, think the worst of you, or whatever.
Yeah.
What would you say a more rational, a more helpful thought would be?
To check, to have a conversation about what they actually think and feel.
So rather than just thinking about things, actually having conversations with people instead.
Yeah.
Is that something that you can actually do right away? Is a change you can make automatically?
I could do that, yeah, very soon.
And what will this then enable? What will this also then change?
It'll bring clarity for me and peace probably into the relationship.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any reason not to do this?
No.
Do you have an idea in your mind as to when you can actually action this and just lay this to bed, finally?
The next time we meet up. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, what else I want to do here, I want to ask you a bit of a more abstract question now, all right? And this is for the purpose of stretching, a little bit of cognitive flexibility here. Right, let's just think about this issue, right? This angst.
Yeah.
I just wonder how or if this situation relates in any way, or how you feel in this situation relates in any way to remember the person that you wanted to initiate with in the earlier section of the course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder what the relationship is between this and that, if any.
There is a connection.
There is a connection.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like when I'm around my family, part of this angst is the uncertainty of where I stand in the relationship, and that there's that kind of element with this other person too.
Is that one of the reasons why you haven't got in touch with that person up until now?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's actually the same problem, isn't it?
It's the not knowing.
It's the not knowing.
Yeah.
The not knowing brings about angst, and angst seems to bring about stagnicity.
Yeah.
Angst seems to bring about non-action.
It does, yeah.
Right, okay. Right, it's good just to make this connection here.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, Karen. That'll do us. Right, friends, that's it, right? That's the question framework. Now, obviously, I didn't rigidly stick to script, all right? And it's important that you don't do that either. You just want to respond to what your client or the person that you're working with is sharing with you, all right? We can take one of two approaches, all right, to working through these CBT processes. The first approach is we can try to get it right, all right, and that's going to most likely trigger all sorts of angst in you. That's like one of Ellis's irrational thoughts, isn't it? Irrational beliefs. I must get it right. Or you can just simply really strive to understand the person, which is really going to urge you then to ask better questions and look to make connections. You want to understand what they're looking at, how they're feeling, and you use this as a template, but not as a rigid step-by-step guide that must be followed, all right, religiously. So what we're going to urge you to do now is I'm going to urge you to use this worksheet. You know, you just seen how I've guided Karen through this, and it's just a conversation. Right? It doesn't have to be any more complex than this. If you've got a friend or a family member or a loved one or someone that you know who struggles with angst or panic or something like this, right? What we know is that of course there's going to be a cognitive distortion going in there. All the anxiety really stems from when people focus on worst case scenarios rather than the best or the likely case scenarios. That's it, all right? Look how quickly it can be resolved. No medication required, no years of conventional therapy or counselling. Don't have to look at relationships with mummy or daddy or anything like this. Just one simple conversation. All right, Karen, any feedback? How was that? How was that for you?
It was quite helpful making a few links there. You know that
few links.
there's a quite a strong link between how I feel about my family and this other person, and that
The person you were talking about earlier on.
earlier on in the course, yeah.
Okay.
And that angst, that being around uncertainty like that causes me to do nothing. Yeah,
It's interesting.
My natural response is
Your
to do
natural
nothing.
default mode. So I'm wondering what the actual issue is here. Is your relationship with those people, or it's your relationship with uncertainty?
That's a good question. Yeah.
We'll maybe explore this in a later conversation, shall we?
Yes.
Right, that's discussion over. I hope you found this demonstration really helpful. It's not a complicated process, but it can be absolutely life transforming for people who are perhaps really immersed in anxiety, i.e. anxiety being their place of permanent residence. So practice at home. You can't break anyone, you can't do any damage. In fact, all you can ever do is lead another person into a greater degree of insight and understanding of themselves. So please try this one at home, and we'll see you again in the next clip.